All right, so I'm actually on my night audit shift right now. It's 3 a.m. I have ran my night audit, and so I wanted to make this video to talk about what it's like being a night auditor, what night audit is, why I chose to be a night auditor, um, and what we do. So, a night auditor is a person that works at a hotel graveyard shift, right? And so what you typically do is you come in, um, you have the least amount of reservations of any shift, obviously, because it's third shift, but you would typically have between 2 and 10 pre-made reservations that will be checking in between the hours of 11 and 1. And if they check in later, typically they tell you. So you have about 2 to 10 regular check-ins. And then, of course, you can have walk-ins where people walk in and check in to the hotel. And obviously, those walk-ins can come through a third party, meaning they're still technically a walk-in, but they made the reservation through a third party. Or they come in and you make the reservation right there, or they call on the phone. Rarely get that many of them, most maybe three. So you come in, you print your paperwork, you print your to-do list, and your to-do list is pretty much whatever paperwork you have to print off, um, whatever little cleaning task that you have to do, which is maybe wiping down the tables and stuff like that, and making sure the coffee is fresh and set up. And then that's pretty much it for a bunch of hours. So if nobody checks in, typically people check in right around like 11. So you might get all your check-ins done. The check-ins may come sporadic. So you have ample amount of hours in between that time. And then typically at 3 a.m. we run the night audit, and I think night audit used to have to like know about accounting and know about math, because obviously you're running all the payments, you're running everything that went through the hotel for that particular day. But now they just have a computer do it, and you just pretty much print the papers and make sure that it's printing all the documents that the night audit needs. So the general manager, and everyone else above that person has the documents that they need. And then you have another 2 to 3 hours where you're pretty much free to do um, what you want to do. And then around breakfast time, which is about 5 or 6, which it depends on what type of hotel you are. Some hotels, like the hotel I work at right now, I do not do breakfast. They have a breakfast person that comes in around 4:30 to 5:30 that does the breakfast. So I just pretty much make sure certain things is clean, and they do the breakfast. So I don't even have to do the breakfast. But I've worked at hotels, which I actually enjoy working at hotels more, that um, have you make breakfast, simply because it just gives a little something to do. Some days it could become mind numbing boring, especially if you're not in the mood to do things that the reason why I got night audit. And I'm going to talk about the reason why I started working night audit. Um, but some nights I'm just not in the mood to do no other work or to be productive, and so and on those nights it gets real boring. There's really not much to do because there's not much activity, and so on those nights it really helps to have to make breakfast. So anyways, a couple things about well, I'll say this. You do have to have a specific personality, or be able to assimilate that type of mindset to do night audit. And here's why. I've trained people that could do what they at hotels, that you could have friends come in, um, you can be chilling, you could pretty much do what you want. And I've trained people and they've either quit or they done something crazy or they showed up late. Um, and this is the easiest job in the world, but I believe that their personality didn't align well with working night audit. So the first thing I would say, to be a night auditor, either you have to be an introvert or you would need to assimilate that personality to get this bread, to get this money, right? Because if you're not an introvert, doing night audit is gonna make you very depressed and bring you down because everyone's asleep. There's not much going on. You spend a lot of time by yourself with your thoughts, um, and you don't have anyone to reinforce what you are doing. Right? It's all on you. Now, of course, the stuff is easy, but like I said, I've trained people who have a very high social type of personality and they just didn't know what it was and just was looking for a job, right? And they tried to do this and they was going crazy because it wasn't about the free time to them. It wasn't about how easy it was to them. They needed stimulation, so it didn't work with their personality. Um, so yeah, you would need to have a more introverted, lean towards introversion. Um, you also would need to be able to be a person that is able to sleep well in the daytime, um, and get your sleep and be fully functional. Now, for me, night audit or working third shift, because I've only had one other job that was consistent that wasn't a third shift job, and that was when I worked for a local organization as a community outreach director, and I mentored boys. I hosted monthly events, um, 300 volunteers in the inner city of my you know where I grew up at. I did that for about 6 years, right? But even that job, I didn't have a set schedule. I had two meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays that I needed to be at. I sometimes ran a class every Wednesday, every other Wednesday, and then I did a fitness class on Friday mornings, but it wasn't every Friday, it was every other Friday. And then, of course, Sunday, we would set up our whole setup in the school, and so I had to be there on Sundays. And then, apart from that, the monthly events, where we would have bounce house, food, candy for kids, and we would have, performers come and speak. And I did that for about 6 years. But even that job wasn't like a set schedule type of job because I don't know, I just never really worked well with like having to work first or second shift because my first job was actually a third shift job at McDonald's. And for me, I never slept well in middle school or high school. I always stayed up at night and I would make it to sleep around like 3 o'clock, have to get up by like 5:36, go to school, whatever, get off school. I would fall asleep, of course, some days, most days. And so my sleep was never really well until I started working third shift. When I started working at McDonald's when I was like 18, 19, um, that's when I started to get decent sleep working third shift. So my personality just naturally worked well with working third shift from the jump. I've never maintained a job unless it was third shift. Um, and so the reason why I picked night audit was because I was actually working at Planet Fitness third shift doing something similar, um, but I wanted to make a couple extra dollars because I knew I was moving from my RV into an apartment at the time, and this was gonna be like my first apartment by myself. And so I kind of wanted to, you know, make a couple extra bucks, and it was a girl that used to kick it with from time to time at the gym, and she was like, "Yo, I'm a manager at a hotel," and I was telling her that like I write books while I'm at Planet Fitness, and she was like, "Well, I mean, I'm a manager at a hotel. You can write as many books as you want. You can do with as long as you do whatever. You should apply." And I was like, "Okay, cool, bet." So I applied, not under knowing nothing about night audit, not knowing what it was. Um, and of course I got hired, and that was about 4 years ago. And so I've been doing it ever since. And so I use the spare time, to read and to write and to make YouTube videos and various other things. But I also use night audit because it's not physically demanding, and I'm training, martial arts and calisthenics and stuff consistently almost every day, you know, after 3 o'clock, right? And so having a job like this, it makes it easy to do that. Whereas before I went to Planet Fitness, I was working at a factory. And if you know, you know. You know what I'm saying? If you know, you know. And with the factories, it was like I was doing double the workouts. You know what I'm saying? Because when I got off work from the factory, I was sore as hell. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I still went and got my money when I could, but it was definitely much more difficult, And another thing was like I would just be eating so much, and I never could get full because in the factory I'm doing all of this stuff, and then I'm leaving the factory, going home, going to sleep, and then getting up and then working out and then taking a little cat nap and then going to work again. And so I just would be eating, can never get full because I was always burning calories. And plus the factories is just, it's different. It's different. So anyways, night audit. So that was the second reason, because it allows me to train, right, and still be functional. Um, and the third reason is because I kind of enjoy it. I kind of do enjoy it. I enjoy working. I need to work by myself. I've always worked better by myself because people bring too much. It'd be too much going on with people. So, um, yeah, that's kind of some of the reasons. Now, let's talk about because with um, the benefits that come with night audit, it's a lot of drawbacks, and a lot of them drawbacks be some of the reasons why people quit. Um, One of the drawbacks is that you do have too much freedom, and if you don't have self control, you will start doing all type of stuff, especially being super bored. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen people. I'm not gonna say too much, but people get super bored. It feels like idle time to them. There's no stimulation because there's no human interaction consistently, and so an idle mind is the devil's playground, I guess, right? And so you can get into a lot of crazy stuff, and so that's one of the drawbacks. And then the second drawback is it's night audit, right? Nothing good happens after 11 p.m., 12 p.m. And so you run into sometimes you can have maybe one moment that's worth a week's worth of stress, right? Like because some creepy guy is like out looking for girls, and they're just like roaming around and they're just being weird and they're asking weird questions and they're just doing weird stuff. And then, that could be overwhelming. And then you might have a fight, where somebody's, fighting. There's a domestic situation. This stuff doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen, right? Or you may have a group that comes in super intoxicated, right, and they're overly aggressive. They're falling over the counter. They're talking to you. Maybe one of the girls is trying to talk to you and like you, and then the boyfriend is upset, and then they're trying to fight. It's like a lot of little weird stuff happened. Like one of my coworkers, they actually quit because of a situation where there was a girl and a guy who came in, and they tried to do a situation where they did it online, but they couldn't pay for certain parts, so they couldn't get the room, and that ended up in a whole big argument. And then the girl came back with the bat, and just all this other stuff, and um was threatening her and saying she was gonna kill her. And you have situations like that. Of my 4 or 5 years, these are not consistent. They just happen sporadically, right? But you'll run into that, and you'll run into where um, homeless people will get into the hotel, and you're doing your night audit walks, and you find a homeless guy, like you know hanging out in the staircase, and you have to get them out, or just it's just real. You kind of have like real intense, really weird moments that happen that can be quite stressful. Like, how they say in the morning it's really stressful because all the big wigs is at work, and you kind of tense and you kind of not at ease because you have people watching you and you have to be performative to a certain degree because everybody's like there. We don't have that at night audit, right? Like, we get to bypass all of that. Same with second shift. Second shift, it could be kind of depressing because it shifts from the daytime and the nighttime, and it's cutting your nights and your days, is splitting them in half, and also it's high energy. So you gotta go, 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 go. Like, anytime I've trained on second shift at a hotel, it's like nonstop people. People are constantly you typically avoid that, right? But those key moments sometimes make up for that, right? Like where you have someone threatening you, or you have some person trying to, lounge in the um, hotel lobby, or you have you know, wild parties, and then you like have to tell the people that is, to quiet down, and they're defensive. And or you have wild parties where you have to kick people out, and when you kick people out, they want to fight and they want to argue, and you have to call the police. Various stories. I'll make more videos, like kind of discussing some of the stories I've had, because like I said, I've been doing this about 4 or 5 years consistently. I work most days, full time. I've been doing this for years, and so that's pretty much the gist of it. I do think that it's a really good career. I would say, or a good job for introverted men. I'm really not jacking the women. I mean, I think it's really good for women, but because of some of the stuff that I've seen happen um with women, I'm not too sure that I like the idea of women doing night audit, simply because I feel that people tend to go a little bit more overboard with women than they would do with men, in my opinion. And obviously, because I know that, like, I've had situations, but there's no way those situations would have happened that intensely had it would have been a man. You know what I'm saying? There. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Night Audit.